Welcome to your tutorial for the next step in your argumentative inquiry project, which is learning how to create an unbiased argument. The word bias is pretty important when you're thinking about how to convince someone of something. And to be biased means that you are really strongly leaning towards one direction or another. So if you think about a teacher who has like obvious favorites, that teacher is biased towards those students. The teacher's kind of looking at those students as being better than others, as an example. Um, the reason why we consider bias is kind of explained in this paragraph here, because really convincing arguments show that the person who is arguing has strongly considered both sides of an issue before they've landed on supporting one side or the other. Biased arguments are ones that tend to be really emotional. They're the ones that tend to only consider their side and not the other side. A really hot button issues tend to be that way. So abortion is a good example. You can find lots of very biased arguments one way or the other, but the best arguments are going to be the ones that consider both sides before forming an opinion. There's a website that does a really fantastic job of showing both sides of an argument, and that is procon.org. They strive to be completely unbiased, so completely fair, looking at both sides of an issue really well. And so that's what you guys are going to do today. So what you're going to do is click on our link for procon.org, and you'll be brought to the home page. You're welcome to kind of look around there, but where you're going to click is Issues We Cover. And you can look at any of these little side places here, but you can also just look at topics A to Z. And my suggestion to you is to first look and see if any of these topics align with what you guys chose in your proposals. So like the topic that you really want to research. If so, I would definitely choose that topic to use for this because it's actually going to help you down the line. So, for example, if you're considering the right to carry guns, you could look at gun control. If you are looking at the concept of abortion, you could look at their article on abortion. Try and find something that could potentially be used as a source later. However, there are going to be some topics that you do not see here. So some of you, for example, net neutrality is one that I remember looking at with some of you, and there may not be a topic that is exactly net neutrality here. In that case, you can choose whatever you want to, but you're still going to complete this work with ProCon because our goal here is for you to see how a really fair, balanced, and unbiased article can be written. So if you don't see one that goes with your topic, just choose one that looks interesting to you. I'm going to choose teacher tenure as my example because I don't think many of you guys will choose that one. In fact, we're going to kind of outlaw that one for you guys to use since I'm going to do it with you. But choose one that looks interesting to you if you can't find one that goes with your topic specifically. Okay, once you're here, just so you can see how procon.org is set up, the place that we're going to use mostly is this side here. And if we click back over to our HyperDoc, you've got instructions in each one of the boxes here. Once you've chosen your topic, you can just kind of go through. So the first part you're going to do is you're going to click on Background of the Issue button on the right-hand side of the page. So I'm going to click right here. And then I've got a pretty lengthy background. The cool thing about procon.org is this stuff is researched like crazy. It is no sort of just like random opinions or anything. It is very well researched. That's why they have so few topics because they do so much research. But the first thing that I need to do here is to skim through the background and use the 3 bullet points to explain the issue. So what we're doing here is we are summarizing, which is one of our 3 main types of research notes that we're practicing. We are not expecting that you read word for word everything in this very lengthy article. However, one of the skills you need to pass your reading SOL and even your writing SOL is the ability to skim and find information and get main ideas. So what you need to do here is you need to practice that skimming. If you read the first sentence and you stop there, you're going to have a hard time filling this out effectively. So what I'm going to do right now is pause my recording, and I am going to skim and read the vast majority of this article and get a really good idea about the background of this issue. Then I'll restart my recording when I have some things to put in my 3 bullets. Okay, so now that I've read this article, I'm ready to summarize, which is one of the 3 types of research notes that we're going to be practicing. Summarizing is taking this whole long article and boiling it down to its 3 main points. So the first main point that I think this article makes is it explains what tenure actually is. So teacher tenure is something that makes it difficult for teachers to be fired after they have worked for a certain number of years, 1 to 5. Okay, so I got that kind of from the top of the article. As I kept reading down, I read a little bit in here about one of the reasons why teacher tenure is important. So teacher tenure came to be a thing because many teachers were being fired for political reasons that had nothing to do with their actual job. Okay, so that's why people like teacher tenure. And then I kept reading, and particularly in this paragraph, I found out some of the reasons why people were against teacher tenure. So teacher tenure turned out to be kind of a bad thing because once teachers got tenure, they were really hard to fire, meaning that some bad teachers kept their jobs. Okay, so this is a summary, very short, of a very long article here, but I've gotten the main points out of it. All right. The next thing that this hyperdoc asks me to do is to click on the top pro and top con argument button. So I'm going to go here. And this is where pro-con lays out all of the reasons why people argue for and against teacher tenure. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to read each of these, at least the bolded parts in each of these, and I'm going to choose the ones that I think are the best. And then I'm going to pause my video and come back once I have something to write, once I've read all of my pros and cons. Okay, so now that I've read through my list, I chose what I think is the most convincing argument for teacher tenure, which is this one right up here, that it prevents school districts from firing experienced teachers to hire less experienced and less expensive teachers. So I put that here in my own words, and what I did was I paraphrased, which means just to put it in my own words, that tenure discourages schools from firing older and higher paid teachers to hire younger teachers who get paid less. And then I explained why I think that's convincing. I could see where some school systems might try and save some money by getting rid of those higher paid teachers and hiring less experienced teachers that they could pay less. So I think that's a pretty convincing argument for tenure. I also need to find another argument that I think is pretty convincing for teacher tenure. So as I'm scrolling through here, I think that this one's pretty good. It says tenure is a good system that has become a scapegoat for problems facing education. So I'm going to come back over here and put that into my own words. So I'm going to say tenure is blamed for a lot of problems, but it's actually a good system. I didn't use the word scapegoat because that's not a word I use a whole lot, even though scapegoat just means to put blame on something else. I put that into my own words here, and now I need to explain why it's convincing. So there are lots of problems with school, such as funding and too many students in a class, but administrators sometimes try to blame tenure instead. Okay? So I did that with my 2 pros, and now I'm going to do the same thing with my 2 cons. Even if I really agree with teacher tenure, I'm still going to consider why someone might argue against it. So I'm going to pause my video, same thing, and look for my 2 cons that I'm going to paraphrase and explain why I think they're convincing. Okay, so the first con that I found that I wanted to save is this one that says it makes it difficult to remove underperforming teachers. And I said here, I paraphrased and said tenure makes it too hard to fire a teacher who isn't doing his or her job well. And that's convincing to me because people in other jobs can be fired really easily. Why can't teachers? I need to find a second con, which I actually think is going to be the next one down for me, the other one that's most convincing. Makes seniority the main factor in dismissal decisions instead of teacher performance and quality. So I am going to paraphrase that by saying teachers are judged by the number of years they have taught rather than how well they teach. And the reason that I think that's convincing is because people should be judged on the job they do, not how long they've been doing that job. Okay, so now that I've finished this section, I'm going to move into my last part where I'm going to use the third type of research note that we use, which is quotes. And when we quote something, we use word for word what someone says. So I'm going to go over here and I am going to, on the right-hand side, click on top pro and con quotes. And what I get here is a similar list to my last one, except these are actual people's words who are talking about the subject. So what my goal here is to find a quote that supports the pros and cons that I said were the most convincing. So I'm going to come up here with my pro number 1, tenure discourages schools from firing older and higher paid teachers to hire younger teachers who get paid less. And I'm going to come to this part and I'm going to look for a quote that goes with that idea. So I'm going to pause my video and find that. Okay, so I found this one right here that says, without tenure, the most experienced and proven educator, someone who has put in years on a school district pay scale, could be fired simply to cut costs in order to hire a newer, unproven teacher. So that one definitely goes with my pro that I chose. So I'm going to come back over here, and in the box that says quote to support pro number 1, I am going to paste in that sentence. I am not going to paste more than 3 sentences. Look how long this total quote is. From top to bottom, that is long. I'm just picking a little piece of it, but I'm going to use my quote ethically and correctly, which means I'm going to put it in quotation marks to show that they are not my words. And at the end, I'm going to put who actually said it. So this is by Heather Wolpert-Gallren. So I'm going to do the same thing for each of my pros and each of my cons. Looking at this one, teachers are judged by the number of years they've taught rather than how well they teach. I can add in my support that I found right here. Never more than 3 sentences, generally about 1 sentence long, making sure I put quotation marks and I put the speaker for each one. So at the end of this, I have looked at both sides of a controversial issue and I have found evidence to support each of those things as well. All right, so that is our first step in getting you guys so that you are considering a very unbiased argument and making really good claims that can be backed up and not have bunches of holes poked in them right away. Good luck and let us know when we can help.